Are we still live? That's weird. It says it's live. Live now. Okay, I don't understand what just happened. Okay, this is rather tragic. It seems like I've been talking for 3 hours. But when I reviewed the live stream, the video that was cut, it was only not even 1.5 hours. So I don't know what happened. But I think it's also okay, because what happened is that we looked at the remedies. We've been already at the point where we looked at the remedies and the request for relief, and we compared the request for relief for both the Georgia and the Michigan cases. And the summary of this is that in the Georgia case, in both cases, right, we're asking that an emergency order is being put in to decertify the results. If they want, they can just send Trump electors, right? In the alternative, plaintiff seeks to basically throw out the mail ballots, the fake ballots, and then make certain declarative statements that things weren't being done right, and impound these voting machines in order to do further inspection. And that's the case for both. And so then somehow it cut off, and I thought it looked like we had a 3-hour live, and I don't know. But what I really wanted to do now is to go to the meat of the releasing of the Kraken. And there's two things that I want to see. I want to see how we are demonstrating the fraud allegation, and I want to see what specific evidence we're bringing forward for these wide-reaching Dominion Smartmatic voting systems issues, right? And so I'm gonna look first about the fraud. I want to check out how we are defining, how we're identifying, how we're telling the court they need to agree with us that there was fraud and not just some honest mistakes. We don't want to say sloppiness. We don't want to say gross negligence. We want to say there was intentional fraud. Okay, so how are we presenting the evidence for such fraud? That's the question. And to do this, I was actually in the Georgia case, but now I'm in the Michigan case again. And that's where somehow the live stream just cut off, and I lost my train completely, and then I messed around for 10 minutes with this stupid YouTube stuff. And I think we have here evidence of fraud. That's it. So this is where we ended up when suddenly something fell apart. There's some mosquito here. So the issue is, let's see if I can go full screen even. No, that's not. Well, full screen. Ain't bad. Evidence of fraud. A pattern showing the absence of mistake. The same, 78. The same affiant, so the guy who wrote an affidavit, further explained in sworn testimony that the breach included: when we did receive the machines, they were not sealed or locked. The serial numbers were not what were reflected on the related documentation. An affiant testified that while in Henry Court, I personally witnessed ballots cast for Donald Trump being placed in the pile for Joseph Biden. I witnessed this happen at table A. I mean, why do they make piles? I don't get it. To me, just making piles, sorting votes, sorting ballots by candidate, to me is a no-no. You don't do that. You take each ballot as it comes and you call who was voted for on that ballot. You don't make a pile of Biden ballots and a pile of Trump ballots, and then you can throw the pile of Trump ballots in the trash, and you can count the pile of Biden ballots twice. That just doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. 80. The affiant further testified that when this was brought to Mrs. Pitt's attention, it was met with extreme hostility. At no time did I witness any ballot cast for Joseph Biden be placed in the pile for Donald Trump. So, piling ballots, that's just ridiculous. Another affiant in the mail-in ballot and absentee ballot recounting process testified in her sworn affidavit that on November 16, 2020, it was also of particular interest to me to see that signatures were not being verified and there were no corresponding envelopes seen in sight. Yet another affiant in the recount process testified that he received pushback and a lack of any cooperation and was even threatened, as if he did something wrong, when he pointed out the failure to follow the rules with the observers while open mail-in ballot recounting was occurring, stating, "However, as an observer, I observed that the precinct had 12 counting tables, but only one monitor from the Republican Party. I brought it up to Erica Johnson, since the recount rules provided for one monitor from each party per 10 tables or part thereof." I mean, that also is ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. That's not enough. Imagine they can't even follow these ridiculous rules where you have just people monitoring, walking around and not actually handling the ballots. It's ridiculous. Another affiant explains a pattern of behavior that is alarming in his position as an observer. In the recount on absentee ballots with barcodes, he testified, "I witnessed 2 poll workers placing already separated paper machine receipt ballots with barcodes in the Trump tray. Placing them into the Biden tray, I also witnessed the same 2 poll workers putting the already separated paper receipt ballots in the no vote and Jorgensen tray and removing them and putting them inside the Biden tray. they then took out all of the ballot out of the Biden tray and stacked them on the table, writing on the count ballot sheet. Okay, so that seems to be the process that they're following. They're sorting the ballots into piles. And that doesn't make any sense. It's just so... I mean, I can't even... The stupidity of these rules is just incredibly stupid. It's incredibly stupid. The system is just so fucked up. But even those ridiculous rules cannot be followed. Because of what? Because of intentional fraud. I guess that's the argument here. Another affiant, a Democrat, testified in his sworn affidavit that before he was forced to move back to where he could not see, he had in fact seen absentee ballots for Trump inserted into Biden's stack and counted as Biden votes. This occurred a few times. Yet another affiant testified about the lack of process and the hostility only towards the Republican Party, which is a violation of Equal Protection Clause. He testified, I also observed throughout my 3 days in Atlanta, not once did anyone verify these ballots. In fact, there was no authentication process in place and no envelopes were observed or allowed to be observed. I saw hostility towards Republican observers, but never towards Democrat observers. Both were identified by badges. Yeah, I have a thought about this. I read, the dog whistling of the left, of their lapdog media is like this. I read something that had some lady whining and moaning about these stupid Republicans that are doing the poll watching, but they are actually trying to, she wrote how they were putting their noses into everything and wanted to see everything and were suspicious about everything. And then they actually made even the voters feel uncomfortable because they were hovering over them and this is the sort of rhetoric that these people are using. They just hate Republicans. And I know how this works because me too. I used to hate Republicans. And I know exactly how this feels. It's hate. You have hate deep down, and you will use that to just prepare yourself to do the worst things against these people. And in addition, of course, comes the fact that they were actually rigging the election and they needed to have people shut up and people swallow it down. They needed to intimidate people and they needed to get people out of the way. But this hostility is a broader problem. It's a broader problem. There is so much propaganda. It is that hostility that is against Trump is against all of us. And my prediction is that if, in the worst case, if we can't stem this tide, and if we just fold and we just accept, even though currently Trump is in the focus of this mad, insane, violent leftist rage. It's Trump right now in the focus. But even though these mad, crazy leftists on Twitter and everywhere else are jeering and cheering how they will put Trump in prison and all his family, and they'll be all in orange jumpsuits, and you wonder, for what? What exactly are we alleging here? For racism or whatever. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have a case. You just use whatever you can find and you then persecute them to the maximum. and you put them in prison. That's how it works. That's how they did it with Dinesh D'Souza. That's how they did it with General Flynn. That's how they did it with Roger Stone. And God help us when there is no more Trump who can pardon some of these people on the day before they would be put into COVID death camp, right? As they tried to do that with Roger Stone. But Trump himself, he will not be, I don't think, I mean, if Trump gives up and is a shill and actually reveals himself to be just a shill, or somebody who doesn't understand the seriousness of the situation, or negotiates his retreat, Trump and his children will not suffer. Those who will suffer are the Roger Stones, the Mike Flynn's, the Steve Bannons, the Tucker Carlsons, and from there on down, those are the people who will suffer. It's the good people from the True the Vote organization, the True the Vote organization. They will be harassed by the IRS. I will be harassed by the IRS. They will try to find anything they can to act out their vindictive rage that comes from a hateful heart that has unfortunately no more an explanation today other than them just being whipped into a mad rage crazy. This reminds me of a short story. A short story in the Middle Ages where they talk about the masses getting violent. But that's where we are. That's where we are. And then that starts with all this crazy accusations against Republicans. It's like, I had some colleague who said, you racist. He called me a racist. And I said, you call me a racist? That's ridiculous. No, okay, he took it back, yeah. But he could never take it back. These people are so unstable. They are so mad. They snap back and forth. They have a hard time because, they're dealing with me. It's a guy who knows me from a professional point of view, right? So he will call me a racist and stuff, but then he will retreat from that. But it's not because he's using reason. It's simply because he ran into a contradiction because he can't really call me racist directly like this. It doesn't really work. So he has to retreat. But he's going to put it out again as soon as he can, right? And it's like, the Republicans, they gerrymander. You pander and you gerrymander. Gerrymandering. Anybody in politics is trying to secure their majorities. Anybody's trying to do this. So to smear gerrymandering on Republicans, that's just ridiculous. I'd be happy if we could actually just not do redistricting in any sense like this. But what they were trying, for example, with flooding the suburbs with Section 8 housing and stuff like this, that is clearly about gerrymandering. It's clearly about flushing down the vote so that they would have an eternal majority. But the media and all these, it's not just the media. It's the Wikipedia. It's the Stack Exchange Politics. It's Quora. It's all these places where supposedly people are talking about politics and about these things from a supposedly enlightened. These are often tech people who think of themselves as very intelligent, and they make these crazy allegations, accusations, because their reliable sources are giving them the license to do that, right? And so you can see here that this hate and this hostility against Republicans is, yes, a sign of their covering up their fraud, but it's also a bigger problem. It's that these people are so full of hate that they will tarnish the sacred ritual of the democratic election by they drag it down. They destroy everything. Just like they destroyed culture, they destroyed the academia, they destroyed everything they touched, they destroy. And right now, these people are destroying the very democracy, the very discharge of the act of civic democracy. Destroying. Yeah. That's why we have to fight, and there's no bowing out of this fight. All right. So we have here this hostile booting out of Republicans. Another affiant explained that the ballot was not only not processed in accordance with the election law, he witnessed people reviewing this ballot to decide whether to place it and violate the privacy of this ballot. And when he tried to report it to a voter fraud line, he never received any contact or cooperation, stating, "I voted early on October 12th at the precinct at Linwood Park. Because of irregularities at the polling location, I called the voter fraud line to ask why persons were discussing my ballot and reviewing it to decide where to place it. When I called the state fraud line, I was directed to a worker in the office of the Secretary of State." And so on. Yeah, you can't imagine how this works. It's just bureaucracy bullshit. I mean, whatever happened to the ballot box? I grew up in Germany, but I soon came to the United States. But I did accompany my parents a few times to the elections, and once I actually voted with 18. and I was a stupid, low information voter. But anyway, once I voted. But I still vividly remember the process. It's a small precinct. People, you identify yourselves with your government ID, the only one that exists. They're finding a name in the person. It was a man in the case where I was there, but it could be